Hey guys, welcome to today's video where we're going to be discussing the Denver Broncos offense and what to expect from them in 2020. Before we get started, please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel grow. And on a quick side note, if you don't already know, I've been writing some articles for the updog.com, which is basically a sports article website where anyone under the age of 22 can post articles on any sports topic that they're interested in. If any of y'all are interested in reading some of the articles on the website, feel free to go check those out. I'll leave a link to them in the description down below. There are some really interesting articles up, and we're coming out with new content daily. Secondly, if any of you are under the age of 22 and are interested in doing some sports writing, then you can sign up on the updog.com right now. By the way, it's free and you can write as much or as little as you want. The only requirements are that you're under 22 and are interested in sports writing. If this is something that you're even partially interested in, why not give it a shot? It's a good thing to put on a resume, and once again, you can write as much or as little as you want. I'll leave the link in the description down below for those that are interested. Now, let's dive into the video, and I hope you enjoy. So before we get started on talking about what to expect from the Broncos offense in 2020, let's talk about what they did in 2019. So in 2019, they were 28th in total yards, 28th in passing yards, 20th in rushing yards, 28th in total points, 30th in third down conversion, 28th in red zone offense, and they had the 6th fewest turnovers. So what that basically says is they weren't a very efficient offense, but they didn't really turn the ball over that much. In other words, they didn't really take shots downfield, and they weren't very aggressive. So this offseason, they brought in a new offensive coordinator in Pat Shurmur. Shurmur was the coach last season for the New York Giants, and he's been an offensive coordinator before in the past. So Shurmur believes in spreading out defenses. He's going to use a lot of 11 personnel, that's 3 receiver sets, to space out the field and to make sure that Drew Lock has a lot of options in the passing game. Pat Shurmur has been successful in his career with having good running games, and it's a good thing that the Broncos have 2 of the NFL's better running backs in Phillip, Lindsay, and Melvin Gordon. Shurmur has had success with guys like LaShawn McCoy in Philadelphia, Dalvin Cook in Minnesota, and obviously Saquon Barkley in New York. He's also good at making quarterbacks good. He coached Sam Bradford in his rookie year, and if you don't remember, Bradford was excellent in his rookie season. Plus, he was in Philly during Nick Foles' first stint as the Eagles quarterback, and he was also in Minnesota when Case Keenum took the Vikings on that deep playoff run. And although Daniel Jones did have an up and down 2019, he did flash at times and arguably proved worthy of that 6th overall pick, and that was thanks to Shurmur. So those trends are likely to continue, and I think bringing in Pat Shurmur is a move to really just help Drew Lock get ready for his 2nd NFL season. Shurmur puts an emphasis on making the run game work to open up the passing game, and this means that they're going to use a lot of play action next season. So all in all, I think Pat Shurmur is a good fit for this Broncos offense. He's good for Drew Lock, and I think he can be really solid. Although Pat Shurmur is talked about as a good offensive mind, I don't think he is going to turn around this Broncos offense and instantly make them a top 10 offense in the league. However, I think there will be some improvements next season, as Pat Shurmur has shown that he can get the best out of average or just below average players. I'm not saying that the Broncos have a ton of average or below average players, but with younger players and more inconsistent players, I think Shurmur could be a solid guy to have. Now let's talk about the players on this offense, and of course we're going to start with Drew Lock. Last season, Lock only played in 5 games because he took over by the end of the season, and he did flash at times. He had a great game against the Houston Texans, and he threw for just over 1,000 yards on a 64.1% completion percentage, and he tacked on 7 touchdowns while only throwing 3 interceptions. Those stats are really solid. If he plays 16 games, let's say he plays 15 games, let's just triple what his numbers were last year. He would have had 3,000 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, which are really good for a rookie season. Yes, he only played in 5 games, so those adjusted stats probably wouldn't have happened. But nonetheless, in his 2nd season in the NFL, if he throws for 3,600 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, which I think he's very capable of doing, I think that could be a great thing for this Broncos offense. Obviously, last season, Pat Shurmur was part of the decision to go and get Daniel Jones for the Giants, and during that process, they definitely talked about looking at Drew Lock, so he has some familiarity with assessing Drew Lock and understanding what he's good and what he's bad at. Lock has a great arm, and I think that he could really fit into this Pat Shurmur offense. Now let's talk about the running backs. The running backs this offseason were a focal point of where the Broncos wanted to improve, and they brought in Melvin Gordon, who's a 2-time Pro Bowler, and during his better seasons a few years ago, he was one of the NFL's best running backs. In 2019, he only played in 12 games. Remember, he sat out for a little bit trying to hold out for a new contract. That obviously didn't end up working out for him, but he now signed with the Broncos, so that's good for Denver. He had 612 rushing yards and 8 rushing touchdowns, and the year before he had 885 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns. There have been a little bit of injury problems throughout Gordon's career, but overall he's never missed more than 4 games in his career, and if that trend continues, that's a good sign for the Broncos offense. They've also got last year's Broncos running back in Phillip, who is a one-time Pro Bowler in 2018. That was his rookie season, and in 2019 he followed his rookie season up with another great year. He had over 1,000 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns in 16 games. So the thing is, now that the Broncos have 2 really good running backs, what's their plan with them? Pat Shurmur has talked a little bit about how each of them are going to be able to do different things. And I think both of them complement each other really, really well. If you look at Melvin Gordon, he is a great power goal line running back. He's good in short yardage situations, and he's able to do some damage there, especially in the red zone. So I think Melvin Gordon will get a ton of red zone carries. That's not to mention he's not going to get first down carries or second down carries, but I think he's going to have an increased workload in the red zone. Whereas a guy like Phillip Lindsay is just an all-out elusive running back. I think Lindsay could be a great third down running back, a great change of pace running back. And the thing is, both of these running backs are really good in the passing game, which is something that could be great in this Broncos offense. I think Gordon will get more touches than Lindsay, but at the end of the day, the Broncos have 2 great running backs to choose from. Now let's move to the wide receivers. Let's start with none other than Courtland Sutton, who was last year's breakout star. Sutton made the Pro Bowl in 2019. In 16 games, he had 72 catches for 1,112 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns. Sutton last year proved that he could truly be a wide receiver 1 in the NFL, and the former second-round pick is really making a name for himself there in Denver. He's 6'4", 216. He can go up and catch the football. He can be a good red zone player, and he's good in open space. Last year, he had 15.4 average yards per reception, which is pretty solid for him. And overall, I think Sutton is a great wide receiver 1. But this offseason, they put a lot of emphasis on getting some great wide receivers, and that all starts with Jeudy, the first-round pick out of Alabama. Jeudy, in my mind, was the second best wide receiver in the NFL draft, but at the end of the day, he could end up coming out as the best wide receiver in the NFL draft. Each of the top 3 receivers were good at different things, and Jeudy happened to be the best route runner. But that's not to say he can't make plays in the red zone, and that's not to say that he's not fast. He is fast. He can make plays in the red zone, but Jeudy excels in route running. Last season at Alabama, he had 77 catches for 1,100 yards and 10 receiving touchdowns. And as a wide receiver 2, who is an excellent wide receiver 2 and proved he can be an excellent wide receiver at Alabama, I think Jeudy was a home run pick for the Broncos. But the guy I'm really excited about is KJ Hamler out of Penn State. This guy is lightning quick. He is Chiefs wide receiver quick. With Hamler, I mean, he did have a few problems at Penn State, but nonetheless, he had 56 catches for 904 receiving yards and 13 receiving touchdowns last season. And he's a guy who can stretch the field. He can take the top off the defense. And especially the Broncos have to deal with the Chiefs twice a year, and they know how deadly speed is on the offensive side of the football. So why not bring in a guy who has a ton of speed in KJ Hamler to help combat that? They're going to be having to score a lot of points if they're playing the Chiefs and the Raiders and the Chargers, who all have good offenses. And a guy like Hamler can stretch the field and just help Drew Lock out in the passing game. I love the Hamler pick, and although there were problems with him, he's a little bit undersized, but nonetheless, he is a great pick, especially in the second round for the Denver Broncos. Now let's move on to the 4th receiver, DaeSean Hamilton. Hamilton is not that exciting, but as a 4th receiver, I think he can do some damage. He had 28 catches for 297 receiving yards last year and 1 receiving touchdown. He played in all 16 games. He's durable, and I think that Hamilton might see an increased role next season, especially with some younger receivers in this receiving corps. Maybe he probably will be the wide receiver 3 at the beginning of the year instead of KJ Hamler, but I think as the season progresses, Hamler will take the 3rd wide receiver role from Hamilton. Now, though, let's move to the tight ends, and of course, we're going to talk about Noah Fant. Noah Fant, everyone is saying that he could be a top 5 tight end in the near future. For me, I don't see him producing that much, but nonetheless, he's a great tight end to have. He's fast, he's physical, and he's great in open space, and he's a great safety valve for Drew Lock. In 16 games last year, he had 40 catches for 562 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. And for Fant, that's really solid in his rookie season. For tight ends in general, that's a really solid for his rookie season. He played much better than his former Iowa teammate in TJ Hawkinson, and nonetheless, I think Fant has all the tools to succeed in the NFL. As I said, I don't think he's going to be a top 5 tight end in the future, but he's definitely got the skills to get there. He's got the speed, he's got the size, and he's got the athletic ability. So watch out for Noah Fant in 2020. They also brought in Nick Vannett from the Seahawks. He's probably going to be a rotational guy, but nonetheless, he had 166 receiving yards on 17 receptions last year. So as a second tight end, he could be pretty solid. But the guy I really want to talk about is maybe the next Noah Fant in Albert O. Albert O, taken out of Missouri in the later rounds. He's 6'5", 258, but he runs 4'5". He's got 4'5" speed. He's lightning quick for a tight end, and he's a mismatched nightmare. Nonetheless, though, he's a little bit of a project. At Missouri, he only had 26 catches last year for 306 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns. He's big, he's physical, he's quick, but at the end of the day, he's very raw, and I think with a little bit of coaching up, Alberto could be a great pick in the future to help back up Noah Fant, and he's a very similar player to Noah Fant. They're both good in the red zone, they're both fast, they're both quick, they're both big targets, and I think they could be great players in the future. Now let's talk about this O-line. Let's start at left tackle with Garett Bolles. Garett Bolles is all over the place. He's durable, but at the same time, he gives up a ton of penalties and he gives up a ton of sacks. Last year, he played over 1,000 snaps. He gave up 17 penalties, which is inexcusable, and he gave up 4 sacks. The Broncos decided not to extend Garett Bolles on that fifth-year option, which probably means that either they won't want him back next season or they'll try to get him on a cheaper deal. Yet nonetheless, he's still under 76.1 PFF player grade, which doesn't really make sense given that he gave up 17 penalties and 4 sacks. But Bolles, I mean, if he's able to have a 76.1 PFF player grade, then he's okay in pass protection. And he's pretty good as a run blocker too. But those penalties are inexcusable. Those sacks are inexcusable. And I don't think Garett Bolles is a great blindside protector for Drew Lock. That's going to be a position that they're going to look forward to improve in the coming years. And I don't think Bolles is a long-term option at left tackle. At left guard, they have Dalton Risner. He played in all 16 games last year. Had 975 snaps played, 3 penalties given up, and 3 sacks allowed. He earned a 64.5 PFF player grade. And at the left guard position, he's an average left guard. He's not going to do too much for this Broncos line, but at the end of the day, it's good to have some average players on this offensive line when in the NFL you're just really looking for some guys that can make a difference. They brought in none other than Llyod Cushenberry as the new center there in Denver. They ended up losing Connor McGovern this offseason, and they decided to refill those shoes with Llyod Cushenberry. Cushenberry was a good center at LSU. He's strong, he's a decent athlete, and he's played against good competition in the past. Obviously, at LSU, they play against other good teams in college football. I think that at the center of that O-line, I think Llyod Cushenberry is a home run. Cushenberry, I thought, could have been an early second, maybe even late first-round pick, and the fact that he fell to the 3rd round for the Broncos is extraordinary. At right guard, they have Graham Glasgow, who they brought in free agency from the Detroit Lions. He played in 15 games last year, played 872 snaps, only gave up 3 penalties, and didn't give up a sack. He earned a 74.1 PFF player grade, and for me, Glasgow is one of the most underrated right guards in the NFL. He's going to be a great run blocker. He's going to be a good pass protector. And overall, I think Glasgow was a home run free agent move for this Broncos offense. They brought him in on a 4-year deal, I think, and I think Glasgow is going to be exceptional, and he's going to be one of the stars of this Broncos offensive line. But at the end of the day, they do have some depth on this offensive line, too. It's not just those 5 guys. They've also got Austin Schlottman, who can play the interior positions, and they've got Elijah Wilkinson, who could be a backup tackle, either at left tackle or right tackle. All in all, I don't love this Broncos offensive line. I don't think they're exceptional in any way. But at the end of the day, I think they're an average offensive line unit. And if Garett Bolles can improve with those penalties and those sacks, then I think this Broncos offensive line can take the next step, help protect Drew Lock, help open up that running game with Melvin, Gordon, and Phillip, Lindsay, and just help Pat Shurmur make this offense successful. The Broncos are coming into their 5th straight year with a new offensive coordinator. And if Pat Shurmur ends up panning out, I think this offense could do well. At the end of the day, I don't love Pat Shurmur as an offensive coordinator. I don't think he's an exceptional football mind. But if he's going to help Drew Lock, that's a good sign. He's helped Sam Bradford get the best out of him. He's gotten the best out of Nick Foles before. And at the end of the day, I think that's a good sign for Drew Lock. The real goal for this season is establishing Drew Lock as a franchise quarterback. And I think Pat Shurmur can help him do that. So all in all, I like this Broncos offense. I don't think they'll be a top 15 offense next season, but I think maybe the 17th, 18th, 19th best offense in 2020. Last season, they were not good at all, but I think they added a ton of pieces, they added a ton of talent in. If you look at Melvin Gordon, if you look at Jeudy, if you look at KJ Hamler, and they're building a real offense here in Denver. They've got a solid quarterback who shined at times in the last year in Drew Lock. They've got a great ground game in Phillip, Lindsay, and Melvin Gordon. And of course, I mean, these wide receivers are only going to improve. Courtland Sutton had a great last year. I think he can be even better in 2020. And Jeudy is a great route runner to help him out. Plus, the tight ends, they've got a lot of them, and they're all guys who can contribute. It really comes down to the O-line. Can they stay healthy? Can they protect Drew Lock? And can they open room for a ground game? But at the end of the day, I mean, if this offense is able to take that next step, I think, in theory, this Broncos team could be a playoff team. There's a lot of competition there, especially in the AFC West. I think there are 4 really solid teams, and if the Broncos were in another division, maybe they can be a wildcard team. I think they could be a wildcard team in the AFC West. I do like the Chargers, and I think the Raiders are going to be good. Obviously, the Chiefs are in the league of their own, but the Broncos are definitely in the mix. Defensively, too, they're pretty solid. They've got Von Miller, and a team that's got Von Miller is going to be okay. They've also got Bradley Chubb up front, and I think if this defense can step up next year, this offense can move up into the top 20 of offenses in the NFL. And the Broncos have a legitimate shot at making the playoffs in 2020, especially with the 14-team playoff instead of the 12-team playoff, and extra teams able to make it, and I think the Broncos could be that team. So watch out, Broncos fans, for the Denver Broncos offense to hopefully take the next step with Pat Shurmur in 2020.
Now that you've reached the end of my video, I want to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe as it helps my channel out, and check out my other videos on my channel. Also, you can follow my Instagram, the link is in the description down below, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, see ya.